Look, I'm not saying I am right, reliably right in my discourse. I'm just opening the possibility of you getting a handle on thinking of these things and getting a context in which you can handle it in your mind. What's reasonable and what's not reasonable? What constitutes the consistency of reasoning? What are the necessities that are bearing down on us? Some realities are that perhaps income tax is much harder and costlier to collect, inefficient and avoidable than GST. Is that always the case? Is it the case in your country's example? It's like with, well, what is a tolerable standard of living we don't want anyone to drop below? And will that make life a lot easier if we provide that for everyone, so that rather than having fixed wages is a bit like fixed rent, isn't it? I can fix the rent low, but then landlords go out of business and you've got no rental market. In other words, fixing a price like rents or prices or wages is counterproductive in the long run. In fact, it's a disaster. So we do value flexibility. And at the same time, it's bizarre, isn't it? We value predictability. And a fixed price and a fixed wage is very predictable. But of course, it's not then performing the work that variability is supposed to do, which is to channel resources accordingly. I don't mean that a floating system of prices, wages, and so on, freely variable up and down, is necessarily right. There are conditions in which it is right. And if there's a lot of monopoly going on, which is dominating, fixing something in the market, then all the other prices are non-optimal. And that came to be a thing that we studied economics called the theory of the second best. That in some sense the second best could be better than trying to go for a perfectly competitive market that isn't. There's, for instance, natural monopoly in it. You don't want, an infinite number of power supply people in the industry, especially owning. You don't want an incredible number of different pylons going across the countryside for different companies. There's a natural monopoly in transport. One railway company tends to squeeze out the smaller ones and so on. The economies of scale in particular mean that competition is not a natural situation. And in that case, you definitely need the government to come to the rescue of the consumer and bring restrictions accordingly. In fact, it's been the other way around, that many restrictions that the government bring, especially through, are in fact, they deliberately give monopolies to. They give rights to patent rights that give monopolies for some number of years, and nobody can compete with you over that time. It's been argued that actually encourages firms to invest in technology and so on. There's a reaction against that, especially nowadays where the really capable entrepreneurs don't bother to take out patent rights. That's much too cumbersome a system. They simply invest so much money in research and development that they beat their competitors by always being ahead. And by the time the competitors caught up with what they're doing, well, the competitor's missing out really, because the leaders have gone on to the next new technology and product. It's a different foundation going on, different assumption that we're reckoning with. The need for government intervention in markets, of course, is seen in major ways right from the beginning. That, you know, if the king didn't build the roads weren't built, and the peasants couldn't move their goods around and so forth. And no peasant's going to be up to building the road or organising all the other peasants to do it. So when it comes to infrastructure in a society, social overhead capital, it's going to be left to the state. And if the state doesn't invest well in it, you know, we've seen that capital renewal, social overhead capital renewal in the states, bridges and roads and docks and so on aren't being kept up to standard through time, and suddenly it becomes a bit of a disaster you've got to cope with on a massive scale. You need responsible government in the sense that governments that have longer horizons than industry, and a view that's for the welfare of the whole society, not just individual view, individualistic goals. We need both. And it's probably something to do at heart with the fact that together as a community, cooperating, we achieve so much more than competing as individuals. And in fact, the firm itself is a cooperation, isn't it? It manages to reward its members within it, employees, enough for everyone to gain and willingly achieve the prosperity of the whole business. And it's not so wrong, therefore, that you have someone like Trump running a government, a sort of, in as far as he is, taking a business approach. He's saying, don't know, I want this to act as a unit. You could say he's being selfish from an American point of view. It's America he's going to put first. And perhaps we need people that have a worldview that put everyone first. But of course he is arguing on those terms that no, you can all join the free trade club, provided you keep the rules. And that is what societies are about, isn't it? Keeping rules. And what do you do when people don't keep rules? Well, you disadvantage them in some way. Because why should they take advantage of a system but not pull their weight? Some sort of logic like that going on, isn't it? So in the present situation, you know, as to date, if China decides, well, we'd rather not have a tariff and end up isolated sort of war going on, we'll play by the rules. Then, of course, there'll be no problem at all. Welcome to the club. Thank you, Heavenly Dad.